Thanks for joining us today for our webinar. We're excited to have you with us. My name's Amy Perkins, and I'm the Marketing Manager for Early Childhood Assessment Tools here at Brooks Publishing. And we're happy to have Susan Ademeyer, the co-developer of the Carolina curriculum, with us. This webinar is on using the Carolina curriculum, an integrated system for assessment and intervention for children with disabilities. And Susan's going to share a presentation about the tool. But first, I'd like to go over some housekeeping tasks about the GoToWebinar system. So you're in listen-only mode for the webinar, but if you have any questions, please enter them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel, or you can tweet them to @BrooksPubCo using hashtag #TalkAboutTools. And we'll take these questions after Susan's presentation during the Q&A. For best audio and screen quality, you may want to exit any unneeded programs. And for the presentation, you also might want to minimize the GoToWebinar control bar on your monitor so you can see more of the presentation. You can do that by clicking the orange button with the arrow in the top corner of the bar. And if you would need to ask a question, you can enlarge the bar by just clicking that orange button again. Also, we're recording the webinar, and you'll receive a link to the recording in a follow-up email tomorrow. We'll also post the recording on the Brooks Publishing website, and you're welcome to share that link with colleagues or other program staff. So now I'd like to introduce our speaker. As I said, we're happy to have Susan Ademeyer here with us. Susan's a pediatric physical therapist in private practice in Hillsborough, North Carolina. She was previously assistant professor in the Division of Physical Therapy at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and she's one of the co-developers of the Carolina curriculum. So Susan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Amy. And hello, everybody. Thank you for taking the time to join us for this presentation. What I'm going to do is go through the basics of the Carolina curriculum, and you will have a chance to do some question and answer at the end. The Carolina curriculum consists of two manuals, the Carolina curriculum for preschoolers with special needs, and for infants and toddlers with special needs. The purpose of the Carolina curriculum is to do a very good assessment of children who have already been identified with developmental issues and are already placed in programs. It will help you to plan and carry out targeted intervention specific to each child and to document their progress. The Carolina curriculum is a kind of a template for embedded instruction, which is considered a best practice approach to children with disabilities. And it's used to promote child engagement, learning, and independence in everyday activities, routines, and transitions. There's quite a bit of good research on embedded instruction, and you can actually look for it online. But the basic things that have been found out about it is that it's really a very effective way for teaching children new skills. It's effective for increasing engagement, participation, and independence, and that it promotes generalization and maintenance of skills, which is what we're all about, and that it is feasible for teachers. It's not the easiest way to go because it demands a lot of attention to detail, but it is feasible. So getting back to the Carolina, I want to just talk a little bit about the characteristics of it. First of all, it is not a standardized test. It is not normed. It's a criterion reference test, so that the rules of standardized testing don't apply. There are two volumes of the curriculum. One of them covers the 0 to 3 age range, and the other covers the 2 to 5 year age range, so that there's a 1-year overlap between the two manuals. And that helps with preschoolers who are still functioning somewhere in that 2 to 3 year age range. The curriculum was written so that it is family friendly. There's absolutely no jargon in the curriculum, no alphabet soup. it is a kind of a template or a skeleton, you might say. Other assessments can be used in tandem with the Carolina. For example, if a speech therapist wants to work on some very specific skills, there may not be enough detail in the curriculum, and she may want to use another standardized test along with it. That works perfectly fine. The Carolina is organized to be compatible with the IEP and IFSP domains. More characteristics, it assumes a transdisciplinary model so that all people on the care team are sharing boundaries and working together. We recognize the need to put in adaptive skills as functional skills. This is one way in which it's different from a standardized test, in which a child might have to say words in order to get credit. In the Carolina, you can point with your eyes, you can point with your fingers, you can use sign language or whatever in order to let the child express what they know. There are suggested adaptations for children with visual, hearing, and motor impairments at the beginning of each sequence in the curriculum. The items in the curriculum are arranged in logical teaching order as much as we could possibly get it to be that way, so that item A comes first, and then B, and then C, and then D. There are 3 components to the Carolina curriculum. There's a manual, an assessment log, and a developmental progress chart. They all contain basically the same information but in different degrees of concentration. A classroom might have 1 manual for the whole class, 1 or 2. Each individual child will have an assessment log and a developmental progress chart. In the manual, there are introductory chapters that you will probably find useful, descriptions of the items, and appendices that you may find useful. The one you're looking at right now is for preschoolers with special needs, and this manual is for infants and toddlers with special needs. And as I mentioned before, if you are working with preschoolers, you probably will also need to be able to reference the infant-toddler manual, because you may have children in your class who are functioning below that 2-year level. Within the manual, each item is described exactly the same, and the manuals flow together perfectly. They all use the same format. You'll see the title of the item, the reference number of the item. You'll see a description of what kind of materials can be used, the procedures to use to assess the items, ways of embedding the items into daily routines and functional activities, and a criterion to use to decide whether the child passes or does not pass the item. Now, the curriculum is designed with a sort of mild to moderate impairment in mind. That means that there will be some children who are either functioning overall very delayed or in some areas very delayed, so that you'll need a finer breakdown of the items, which you will have to do yourself, tailored to the child. For children with mild impairments, the curriculum is pretty much perfect as stands. If they have moderate impairment, you might need to adapt some. If they have severe impairment, a lot. If they have profound impairment, really a lot. But even if you have a child with severe to profound impairment, over a period of time you can still measure progress on the curriculum developmental chart. This is the assessment log, a page from the assessment log, and each child has one. On the left-hand side of the page, you see the age range of the items, and then to the right, the items listed along with their identifying letter. And then there are 4 columns for assessment. You would start using, in the initial assessment, you would use the first column on the left and then 3 subsequent assessments. The scoring system for the Carolina is very simple. It's a 3-point system. You score a child plus on an item if it is present and generalized. And the important thing there is that if you score plus on an item, that means they have it. You're not going to pay attention to it anymore. If the item is emerging in some way, you would use a plus-minus score. If it is absolutely not present, either because it's beyond the age range of the child or because they should have it and they simply don't have it, you score minus. There's a code A for physical assist, which you can use for any non-motor item that a child can only express if an adult assists in some way. For example, if there were a child with affectoid cerebral palsy and they could point to a picture or something if an adult holds their arm but does not assist in the child giving the answer. That code should be a red flag that the OT or PT needs to look at that child and make some adaptations to the wheelchair so that the child can indicate a response independently. And you can also make up whatever useful codes you want. Because this isn't a standardized test, you make it work for you so that it gives you the information that you need to work with the child. In order to score the assessment log, you first prep up, become familiar with it, get all the materials together that you need. I should mention that there is no kit for the Carolina. The items that you need to assess children can be found in any preschool. A lot of programs like to keep a tub of materials just off to the side so that they will know where's the scissors, where are the blocks. But there are no real specialized materials needed. And as you're scoring the assessment log, you would just keep the manual handy for reference, because if you don't quite know what this item means, just quickly look it up in the manual. I highly recommend that you use what we call the efficiency gradient. Okay? If you had the assessment log in front of you right now and a particular child in mind, you could probably fill out at least half of it all by yourself because you score what you know already. And that's the most efficient thing to do. The next most efficient thing is to ask another adult. Ask a parent, ask another teacher, ask a therapist. The third most efficient thing to do is to just watch the child. Children will demonstrate to you which skills are solid and mastered and which skills are emerging and which skills are not there. And finally, in order to complete the assessment, you can do some direct assessment, table tasks or whatever. The first thing that is recommended is to do a parent interview. And this is a really important way of bringing the parents in onto the team so that you're all working on the same page. You can gather information on things that you can't really observe, bathing things, possibly dressing things, self-care things, and you introduce them to the process of how you're going to go about this. So talk to the parents and fill in as much of the log as you can. And then you can look at the child. You can observe play sessions and see what kind of skills you're looking at. And then again, just fill in the log as much as you can. You don't have to do it in any particular order. You can watch a child playing on the playground, for example, and get all kinds of information about gross motor skills, fine motor skills, communication skills. You can watch a child interacting in the classroom. You can observe how a child behaves at mealtime. And if you're working in children's homes, you could watch how they interact with their mom at mealtime. What is their conversation like? What are their social skills and fine motor skills like? And finally, you would look at items that you see what you haven't captured yet and maybe test those directly or ask those directly. There is not really a basal and ceiling on the assessment. You'll generally find that a child will pass a number of skills in a row and then start seeing emerging skills, and then you'll see that they start to fail a number of items. But I recommend that you scan the entire sequence so that you can capture any scattered skills. The third element in the curriculum is the developmental progress chart. And this lists all of the items, just the title of the item, and it's divided into age groups. So you color in the blocks where the child passed the item, and then you use that same chart for the next assessment and color those in with a different color. That way you really have a good visual of how much progress has been made in that time period. And in my experience, this developmental progress chart is one of the most valuable tools for working with parents. They can often get overwhelmed by all the piles of tests and scores and numbers and pieces of paper. But if you just put down this one piece of paper and show them this chart and say, okay, so now you can see where the child is farther ahead, farther behind, if there are any gaps. And this really motivates the parents to say, well, so what's that item? Maybe we should work on that. The process for coloring in the developmental progress chart is, if they pass the item, you color in the entire square. If you get a plus minus for an emerging skill, you just color in the top diagonal half of the square. And if they don't pass the item, you leave the square blank. You can make up any codes that you want. There are a whole lot of children in preschools now who are on the autism spectrum, and they may have unusual or typical child-specific behaviors, such as, well, he'll smile at this person, or on Mondays he never does that. So whatever it is that will make it easier for you to keep track of the child's progress, just make up your own codes. The next step in the process is to figure out, with the assessment having been done, okay, what are we going to do in the next reporting period, which is where the programs are organized to require an assessment every 3 months or every semester or every year. It's quite variable. But for say, a program that is going to reassess in 3 months, you would list all the emerging skills, because those you'd obviously want to work on, and list skills that were not passed if you think that you can make some progress in that area during that reporting period. So this is your to-do list. Then, once you have that list, you assign the activities. Ask the parents what they want to do at home. They usually have some things that are very high priority for them. And anything that the parents decide is a high priority is definitely going to get done. We know that. And you decide what the teachers are going to do in the context of just the daily classroom routines during various centers or activities, and what activities are more specific or detailed or require one-on-one that the therapist will do. And finally, you figure out a way of collecting your data. And I can't really advise you on how to do that, because every program does things differently. Some are highly organized and have everything on a computer. Some people use iPads, some people use notebooks, but figure out a method that will work for you, and do it in a way that you're collecting the data ongoing. In other words, when a child passes an item, you record that and then move right on to the next item. An added benefit to doing that is that when it's time for you to write your summary report at the end of the period, you pretty much have it already done. So that's a very efficient way of doing it. The successful implementation of the curriculum requires really good cooperation and communication and flow between all of the people who surround the child: family, teachers, aides, therapists, and administrators. And by doing that, you're really doing the embedded instruction that makes the children progress as fast as they possibly can. So at this point, I would like to entertain questions. Do you have any questions coming up?
Sure. So if anyone has any questions, you can enter those in your question box for the GoToWebinar in the GoToWebinar panel. So just type those in and I'll see those. And we do have a couple questions that that did come in. So how many members should be on the assessment team? Is there a certain number?
No.
Or limit? No. Or okay.
No, no. Well, however you're organized. That's very case specific, and they don't all have to be present either. It is possible, for example, if the therapists are itinerant, that they can simply be provided with a copy of the assessment log and fill in their part of it. So there are no rules and regs about how many have to be there. One person, I do it myself in my early intervention practice with the parent.
Okay, great.
Did that answer the question?
Yes, yes. Can you talk a little bit about how you share results with families after the assessment?
I don't share after the assessment. They help me assess.
So they see it as it's going on.
They fill it in.
Okay.
I give it to them. They fill it in. Okay. I'm a very strong proponent of getting the parents right in there as peers in the process. So we go through it. They help fill it out. They see it. They frequently color in the chart. And that really focuses them on their child's abilities. If there were some case, for example, in a preschool, now I work in an early intervention setting, so I'm in the homes, and that's a completely different situation. If you were in a preschool setting and you didn't have good access to the parents, I would, at a parent meeting, first show them the developmental progress chart, because that's the summary. And then I would go into more detail as they asked questions. You know, why is this here? Why is that there? Okay, that one said, it recognizes common dangers, and Johnny runs out into the street. Okay, so then you can go into the specifics after that. Mm-hmm. Frequently, well, you would also share, you know, the written report. But I really think that the very best way to share the totality of the findings with the parents is to first show them the chart. Did that answer the question?
Okay, great. Yes, thank you. We have a question from a listener who is asking if the Carolina curriculum is used with children who are typically developing.
I think it's overkill for children who are typically developing. No, I don't think it would be necessary. There are probably other more general just development books that could be used. But if I could have more detail on that question, I could answer it better. It could be. I mean, there's no reason why it couldn't be used for children with typical development. I just think it would be overkill.
Okay. We have a question about the age range of the children. In the beginning, you explained that the two volumes, one is the 0 to 2 age range, or 0 to 3, and then 2 to 5. So, what if there's a preschool child whose their skills are lower than the 2 years? Could you drop down and use the first volume, the infant toddler volume?
Yes, that would be the thing to do, and the two volumes flow into each other perfectly in terms of, you know, the numbers of the sequences, etc. So you can just flow easily from one manual to the other.
Okay, great. So if anyone has any other questions, go ahead and them right now. Oh, we have a thank you that came across from someone from Cape Town, South Africa. So we're happy to have people from South Africa listening. So that's great.
Wow. Would you like to come and do a training?
Yes, we'd all love to come do a training or a conference in South Africa. That would be great.
Yeah.
Okay, and then is there any specific training needed to use the Carolina curriculum?
Technically, no. You could just really get the team together and explore the manual, and you should be able to do a pretty good job. In my experience, it is beneficial to have a training because there are things that just aren't in there, and other examples that I could share from my experience. And when people train together, they all get on the same page. So I do think there is some benefit to having the training, but if there is no access to training, I would say just go ahead and start working with the materials. And if there are any problems or questions, I can be emailed.
Great, thanks. Susan, do you have are there other slides after this, the slide about training and then the slide with the images of the products? So yeah, so this slide, training is offered through Brooks on Location, which is a professional development program here at Brooks, and training locations can be provided at your site by Susan Ademeyer. So there's some information. You can learn more at brooksonlocation.com. And then this is as a special thank you for joining us. There's a 20% discount code on your screen now, and so you can save 20% if you're interested on the Carolina Curriculum Manuals. The image on the lower end is the Forms CD-ROM. So the developmental progress chart and the assessment logs, you can buy them in CD format so you can print them. There's also paper forms available and electronic forms if you'd rather have them in a PDF format. You can also buy them that way. So we have a code up on your screen now that you can use that'll save you 20%. So if anyone has any other questions, you can go ahead. I think we've answered all that we've gotten so far. But we thank you. Thank everyone for joining us. And we have recorded the presentation, so you'll be sent a link tomorrow, and feel free to share that with your colleagues. And Susan, we thank you for joining us and telling everyone about the tool.
It was a pleasure.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. So we hope everyone has a great rest of your day, and thank you very much.